Hello, and welcome to the Bamboo Lab podcast with your host, peak performance coach, Brian Bosley. Are you stuck on the hamster wheel of life, spinning and spinning, but not really moving forward? Are you ready to jump off and soar? Are you finally ready to sculpt your life? If so, you've landed in the right place. This podcast is created and broadcast just for you. All of you strivers, thrivers, and survivors out there. If you'd like to learn more about Brian and the Bamboo Lab, feel free to reach out to explore your true peak level at www.bamboolab3.com.
All right.
Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of the Bamboo Lab podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Bosley, and I'm very excited for this guest we have on today. Before we get started, however, what I want to do is share the analytics. This is the third podcast we've done in 24 hours, so the analytics haven't changed that much since the last two podcasts. However, we are now on 6 continents, which we have been, 40 countries, all 50 states, and we are now at 997 cities. Yesterday, we were at 994. We're trying to get to 1,000, so please hit that like button out there. Share, review, like, and please, like I said, share it with 3 people you love. The guest I have on today is exciting. I'm really excited to have her on here. So I reached out to her. Instead of somebody reaching out to me, I actually physically or proactively reached out to her. But before we started introducing our guest, I want to share a nice heart letter we got just this week. Person emailed and said, or texted and said, I just listened to your podcast. Solid work. I enjoyed the quote, your past will dictate your future if you live there. That's a fact. Thank you, sir. And that quote came from the episode last week with John Moser. So thank you, John, for sharing that. You're reaching out and hitting a lot of people in the heart. All right. Without further ado, today we have a lady who became a friend of mine on Facebook, and I don't know how. I'm sure I reached out to her. I probably saw some picture on her profile that was intriguing because she's really a cool, I think I would call eclectic maybe, and you'll find that out here soon enough. But we have Melissa Barackman on here today. Melissa is the owner of North American Bigfoot Center with her husband, Cliff, and this is in Boring, Oregon. She and Cliff have been married since 2017. They both worked on the production and worked on the TV show from Animal Planet, Finding Bigfoot, which for 9 years ran. I think they did 100 episodes, and it was one of Animal Planet's biggest hits. We probably saw Cliff's face on screen many times. I know my son Dawson and I watched it many times, and many of those episodes, Melissa was behind the scenes. She's in film production, special effects, and props. She has TV film credits that are TV shows and movies called Loose, Get Gone, and Evil Lives Here on the Investigation Discovery. So when I reached out to her, when I first became her friend, I didn't know she was Cliff's wife. Cliff was her husband. And then I thought, wow, that's pretty coincidental because like I said, Dawson and I really loved the Bigfoot stuff. And you probably don't know, Bamboo Pack, that I'm a Bigfoot fanatic. I've been a Bigfoot fanatic since I was a young boy, and I read a book on North American monsters or something, and Bigfoot connected with me. And so I watched every episode, I think, that they put out. And we have other guests coming on that are in the Bigfoot world. But what I like about Melissa is she does so many other cool things. I've seen the props she's made. She puts them on Facebook, the interesting things she creates. And so what I really wanted her to come on, because I think her creative mind is so powerful and so needed in this world. And I think so many of you, in fact, I know so many of you are going to really get a lot out of this episode. I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of heart letters from this. So without further ado, Melissa Barackman, welcome to the Bamboo Lab podcast.
Oh, wow. What an intro. Thank you so much. It's so good to be here.
Well, thank you. So now I know following you on Facebook and seeing some of the things you do, and I know you travel a lot, and I know you're very busy, so I'm just so grateful that you took the time to come on here with us today. Can you share with us who you are, where you came from?
Sure. Before all this craziness, I grew up in Western Pennsylvania, about a half hour north of Pittsburgh. And I have one sister and mom and dad. My parents divorced when I was like 4. And then I have a really great stepdad, Kurt. So it was a pretty small little town, high school was small, that sort of thing, small town. But I always felt, I don't know, I always was just like kind of a weird person. I always felt different from my friends. You know what I mean? Like they were going through school and everything. Their interests were kind of always like pop culture and, things like the newest Beanie Baby or whatever it was. And I was like, I want to buy bongos, or, I just always felt like a little off, I liked that part. I actually recognized that as something not negative, but something kind of cool, that I liked the artists and the music that wasn't so mainstream, but not fitting in with your hometown is probably a lot of people's story. But I always dreamt of like going somewhere else. I kind of always knew that I wouldn't really stay there, and which turned out to be true. But yeah, very close family, and they're all still back there in Pennsylvania.
What got you to move to Oregon?
His name is Cliff.
Okay. Cliff was a persuasive salesman.
Yeah, he was. And I mean, before then too, through college, I come home and I used to work in Connecticut at a YMCA outdoor camp for kids. So I was a camp counselor, and all those rumors are true, whatever you've heard about them. And then I did a small stint in Florida as well. Didn't particularly, wasn't my scene. It was a lot of bugs and snakes, and it was really hot. But and I mean, traveling, this is kind of jumping ahead, but my family has always been super supportive of whatever I do. And I think that helped, obviously. But I feel like traveling with the TV show, that really got me less afraid to make the big transition out here, because I was used to traveling and going all over the place looking for Sasquatch with a bunch of people, like 15, 20 of us, whatever. And I think it kind of prepared me to take the leap with Cliff, and have the faith that I was like following my heart and doing the right thing. Because it was really hard leaving behind my friends and family, who are my best friends, really.
Right.
And well, now Cliff is, but.
I read an article when I was doing research on you that when you were working on the show with Cliff, he looked and asked somebody, "Who is that?" I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what the article said. It was an article. It was actually an article about how much you guys love each other, and we both have to travel, but you were together on Valentine's Day and something like that. The article was, I skimmed through it, but I wanted to just get some basic framework on your and Cliff's relationship. But he seems like a really good dude. If his personality is anything like his personality on the show, that's a solid man.
Yeah, he's a very solid man.
Yeah,
he's funny and quirky and silly, and really smart, which I love. He's one of the most intelligent people I know, and he's a talented musician, and he's just a great overall person. I'm really lucky that I had the opportunity to meet him.
I'm sure.
And that being said, at work, usually, when you're working on TV sets, or even film sets, it's kind of a written role. You don't get involved with cast members, or usually you just don't go there. But we dated, we were friends first,
Sure.
And then I had no idea he liked me or anything like that. I was like, he's super helpful, But I think that and I was unemotionally available at the time, and there were a lot of things going on. But I feel like he was just so patient, and I think that goes a long way in relationships, is just being super patient. He definitely is. Thank God.
That's amazing. Well, you had said you're very lucky to have met him. I think you're both lucky to have met each other. Let's leave it at that.
Thank you very much.
I think Cliff would probably say the same thing.
Oh, yeah, I hope so.
So, growing up in a small town in Pennsylvania, and then obviously now you've got to travel so much, and you're still traveling and being involved in a very successful TV show for 9 years that ran for 9 years. Who was your greatest inspiration growing up, Melissa? Or what? Maybe?
Okay. Yeah. It wasn't, I got to say, I think, so this is going to be totally off track, because what I wanted to do with my life, I went through the 19th Pennsylvania. It was very strange because we don't get a whole lot of tornadoes, but there was an EF3, 5. Those are like enhanced Fujita ratings of wind speeds. Okay. So EF5 is like really 200 miles an hour plus, and then you get EF4 or whatever. So EF3 is pretty big for my area, and I think we lost 9 people that day.
Ooh.
In our towns, like nearby. But so I lived through that, and I became super obsessed with tornadoes. And I just couldn't believe, like, when you see the damage and everything like that. So my local weatherman, Joe DiNardo, was like my hero growing up. And then Warren Fadley, who was the first full-time professional storm chaser in the world. And he's a photographer, storm chaser kind of guy. He lives out of Arizona. And I followed his career, read all his books. And and I was actually going to go to school for meteorology, but that science thing, and the math, it's not my thing. But like, it's funny because I love weather. I love destructive weather, especially. It's beautiful and terrible all at the same time. And I think that's where my love of monsters kind of came into, because, obviously I was into the horror genre, and I saw a lot of horror movies at a young age that I probably shouldn't have seen. But that's where Tom Savini, George Romero, I started getting highly influenced by those guys.
Well, what I found amazing, and we talked about this before the show, you were a non-believer in Sasquatch prior to becoming involved with Finding Bigfoot.
Yes.
Can I ask you what the pivotal moment was where you started to say, you know what? I'm not atheist anymore. I'm a little agnostic. Now I'm a firm believer in Bigfoot.
Yeah, actually, I know specifically what episode we were filming. Okay, so when you're on the crew in Finding Bigfoot, you go out in the woods. You're in the woods a lot, and they're off knocking in the woods and yelling and screaming, and there's a very small little crew with them. There's like one sound guy, one producer, one camera guy, right? And everybody else, we're at base camp, making food or doing whatever, working, sleeping, some of us, and a lot of times, everybody was like a non-believer, I think, on the crew. But then by the end of the run, there's believers now. And I was one of them. I mean, you spend enough time in those woods and you start hearing things that are really, suspicious. Mm-hmm. And we were in Turner, Maine. And that's when I heard my first something. And it was pitch black. And I remember me and Talking Baby. His name is Mike. Sorry. That was our nickname for him because he had such a baby face. He was so helpful, and he was helping me out. They needed sticks, run up to like where they were filming, which is like a tripod. And we had to do that in the pitch black because you're not allowed to have lights. You're not allowed to make noise. You have to be very quiet. So you couldn't see in front of you. And we're running with these tripods. And then on the way back, this kid's like half my age because I was like 36 or something when I was working on the show. Okay. And he was like 20 something, and he's like running down, no problem. And I'm like, I'm taking like, 2-minute steps. And then right behind me, and it was above me to the left, I was on the trail and in the woods there. I don't know what it was, but it was like a growl. And I've tried to do it with my own voice, and I can't. I just sound insane. But it was enough that it was so loud, and it was almost like infrasound too, like the feeling of being watched and the feeling of I don't even know. I can't explain it, but it was so terrifying. And then I came down and told everybody about it. They all thought I was crazy, but
did you feel it in your chest too, like in your body?
Yeah. That's what I mean by the thing. Yeah. It was like thunder rumble, but it was also like I could say maybe it was a cat, but it wasn't. It's like now that I live out here, I hear them, and that's not what I heard. I don't know. And then from there, I mean, I've had plenty up here in Oregon, even on the show. I heard tree knocks and vocalizations. And I never saw one, but that's coming probably. Oh man.
As soon as you do, I want to know, because this is why, and I did this show kind of to be a little selfish for me and my son, because like I said, I'm much more, he used to be when he was younger. Now he's in college, so he's got better things to do. But sorry, somebody outside's horns going off in their truck. And so this is really one of the reasons why I was so excited to have you on here today. I could sit and talk about this for hours. So the next question. So I'm going to ask you let's just say the last year. When did Finding Bigfoot go off air? It was 9 seasons, 100 episodes or so. When was the last season on Animal Planet? I know there's been some other special episodes.
Right. Yeah, there was the 2-hour reunion special in 2020, and then I think it ended in 2016.
Okay. Okay. So it's been 6 years already. I mean, it's syndicated all the time. So, I mean, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
and the sad thing about that was I moved out in 2016 in October, and unfortunately, I mean, I don't think you mind me speaking about this, but his mom had passed, and so we were down in LA area, and for a funeral and everything, and it was just a horrible, horrible day, and I just felt so, it's just horrible. It's just terrible. He was a parent, and I just remember just trying to be there for Cliff and just not thinking too much, because I'm one of those people that if you're crying, I'm going to cry too.
You're an empath.
And so, too much so. Like it ruins things, half the time. But so I really try to be strong mentally for him, because I know he needs me. And I remember we got home from the funeral, and it was just there was friends around, and then he got a call from one of the showrunners, and he said the show's done.
Oh, wow.
So he found out the show was done on like the same day as mother's funeral. Oh. So it was like just a day of ending, So, and I mean, honestly, I think in retrospect, he is really happy. I mean, because you can't just keep going on and on. I do think that it's good to cut a good thing short. Like Breaking Bad. I love Breaking Bad. And I'm grateful that it didn't just keep going on and on and on, because that's what happened to Walking Dead for me. Like I stopped in like season 5.
Nothing new ever happened after that. It just kept the same. Okay. It was the same episodes every time with just different characters. That's what I found. I didn't finish watching. Walking Dead just finished a couple of weeks ago, I think.
I know. I heard that, and I was like, but then there were like stormtroopers in there or something. I don't know. I just can't.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. It got a little odd. There were few episodes during the early, a couple of episodes in the early couple of seasons got a little weird for me. I'm like, do I really want to watch this or not? But I got through them and I started getting good again, but then I quit. One of the things about Finding Bigfoot that I found is, in talking with the 4 different, the 4 stars on camera, is the one thing about Cliff that I remember is he had like a childlike excitement about it all the time. Like it made you excited for what they were going to do. And that's what I found really fascinating. It's like he got you excited because he was always excited to go on that next, that next search, and that where they'd split off. He was always so passionate. And that I think that drew a lot of people in, like me and my son, because it was like, we're already excited about the content and the idea of a possible upright walking primate in North America. And then now he got us even more excited. So I could see how it probably was a bittersweet moment when the time passed, especially after losing his mother just a few days before. So.
Right. It was a lot, but it was also an opportunity for something new. Yeah. It's kind of like the old saying, when, a door closes, a window opens, or whatever. But I feel like that was it was time. And I think for all of them, because, you want to keep doing the same thing. That's great. And I mean, maybe they they have gotten footage of Sasquatch on the show. There has been, a lot of vocalizations and knocks. I mean, they got stuff. People always harp on it, they're never not finding Bigfoot, but it's, it was the most real show you're ever going to get about Bigfoot, because they were so adamant about doing it the right way. And if you even thought about hoaxing, like, you were fired.
Really?
They let the research and what they're doing, because a lot of times, there has to be a story, right? There has to be some kind of like point A, point B, linking the two together and make a cohesive story for each episode. But, they line up all the witnesses that they got and they researched. But if that town hall meeting got new people that had better stories, they totally threw everything away and just did what, like Matt and Cliff wanted. Like, hey, this story was great. Let's follow up on this one instead of, the other ones. So it was a really good show. I give them a lot of credit for being credible.
I do too. And that, I think the problem is we only see an hour with commercials of an episode and all the work that goes behind that. What got you involved in the TV show? How did you get involved?
Oh, well, I knew Renee, one of the cast members as well. I knew her from previous times. We have common friends in New York. And so she had called me and wanted to get me on for an upstate New York episode. And at that time, I had left corporate America. I was in taxes. Oh my goodness. I can't believe I was in that, but
you were doing
I
taxes?
was kind of, yeah, like I wasn't doing the taxes. I was proofreading financial statements. That's
Okay.
basically what I did.
Wow.
I was in that world and I was there for about 7 years, but I always had this like creative side that I was not fulfilling. And I felt like I was dying slowly. And, you know, yes, I had an IRA. Yeah, I had benefits. Yeah, I had a paycheck every 2 weeks. You know, it was perfect. I was adulting, you know, I was feeling good about myself, but also I was dying. So I made the jump. And I was just thinking, I really, if I don't go for it, I'm never going to go for it. I was in my late 30s and I just said, all right, Starbucks. And, you know, I worked with some fashion designer at the time too. And I did craft services for commercials and little TV shows. And I just made ends meet by working all those 3 jobs. But,
I want to connect. You don't mind if I interrupt you just for a moment? Because I want to share with the Bamboo Pack member out there listening what Melissa just said, because she was doing, I mean, she's got, what I see on Facebook, she's this incredibly creative person. Really, I would say really right brain oriented. She's got empath styles. And she was working in financial statements in New York and adulting, as she said, which a lot of times there's nothing wrong with adulting, but adulting has to be, it's only appropriate when you're adulting in something you have a passion for. Otherwise, you're just committing very, 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 very slow suicide. You're just living out your 85, 90 years on this planet for someone else. And I just love the fact that she got an opportunity. Renee called her and, hey, we're going to do a show in upstate New York. You want to be involved? And over the time, she jumped on that, and then look at where it took her. So many times we're so afraid to stop what we're doing, even though we might not hate it, but we don't have a passion for it. And we'll just continue to do it because it's what we're supposed to do. We're plugged into the machine. And so we're just continue to grind and grind and grind. If what you're doing is not your passion, I'm not saying quit your job. I'm saying find your passion. And over the course of a month, a year, 3 years, find a way to get out of that job that you have no passion for and chase that mother effing dream, man, and chase your passions. Because I would imagine if I were to interview Melissa back when she was in her 30s and she was doing financial statements, she wouldn't be the happy person she is today. She wouldn't be as grounded and as content and really finding her spirit like she is today. That's just a guess, but it's a guess I'd bet a lot of money on. So
thank you.
Chase your dreams, man.
Yeah, you should, because you know, I always thought too that the universe rewards those who take chances.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because we're literally here to enjoy our time and just exist. You know, we're not expected to do anything else, really. It's weird. We put all this other stuff on us. I mean, yeah, we have to be responsible and we have to take care of things, but people put so much emphasis on like defining themselves and putting themselves in these boxes. You know, I feel like, because I can't even define myself. That's like when you're like, what, do you have a bio? I'm like, no, because I wouldn't even know what to write because I can't say I'm anything, because then that's saying I'm not other things.
Right.
It's weird. I have a weird hang up about that.
I did. That doesn't surprise me at all, actually. I loved when I emailed you last week and said, hey, send me a picture that I can use as a promo. And I thought that was going to be the picture you would send me, you with the prop claw, the prop hand.
Yeah.
That was perfect.
Like, there you go.
Yeah, that was perfect. That was so apropos. Melissa, in the last year or so, I know we've gotten through COVID through our country and the world, or at least we're down the very, very, very downside of it. What have you learned in the past 1 to 2 years that maybe surprised you, or just overall, what was a big learning for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think, so much, right? I feel that all of us probably learned how to be more adaptive, you know, and just, okay, this is it now. What do we do? And, you know, and finding solutions on how to keep money coming in, or how to deal with not seeing your friends and family and not being able to possibly get groceries because you live in a rural area that might not have Instacart or whatever, you know. But I got to say, I feel like I learned how introverted I really, truly am. And how isolated my life kind of was anyway, because the social part of it never bothered me at all. I mean, yeah, I miss my friends a little bit, you know, obviously, you know, we FaceTime but I live on a private road with hardly anyone around. And I have a very small social circle here. But I think it taught me that I felt really bad for extroverted folks who need people and social. And I think I became more empathic toward the more extroverted people.
Well, that's a really interesting. I've never had anybody answer it that way. And one of the things I've learned, Melissa, is I don't know if I learned this because of COVID, but people always thought I was extroverted, and I'm not. I'm very shy. I would always I always said I'm an introvert, but because of what I do, before COVID, I was traveling a lot and speaking, and I do this all day long, podcast now and coaching clients. I'm extremely shy. And people don't see that. So what I came to the conclusion is I'm probably more of an ambivert, kind of a combination of the two. And that might have been through COVID. COVID didn't really affect me that much. The seclusion didn't really affect me much. I mean, my son and I stayed home, and we just, we went through our lives. We just did it at home. We like you said, I think a lot of us became more adaptive, and those who didn't are the ones who came out of COVID, I think, with a lot more challenges mentally, or emotionally, physically, because they couldn't adapt well to it. Or when they sat home and watched the news all day, 24/7, as it became more terrified and paranoid. But right. I think the people who did it the right way became out stronger and more adaptive. I think that's a great answer. That you found out you're more introverted. So I know you don't live in Boring, Oregon. How far are you guys from Portland or Eugene or Bend, where you live?
Oh, okay. From Portland, we're about 40 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're in a town called Sandy.
Yeah.
And Sandy is about 20 minutes from Boring. So we're just up towards Mount Hood, that humongous, beautiful mountain that I just give thanks to every day I see her. I love Mountain Hood. Mount Hood is so beautiful. But so we're just in the foothills of Mount Hood. And it's really easy to get to Portland because a lot of the supplies I need and everything, they're down there. So about probably 3 hours or 3 hours maybe to Eugene. It might be 2.
Okay.
Bend, probably the same, maybe 3 or 4.
Okay. Do you ever go to Powell's?
Do
you ever go to Powell's bookstore in downtown Portland?
I have been there, yes.
That place is insane.
Amazing.
It's crazy.
It is. It is so great. I've been wanting to go to a signing or a reading there. I haven't made it for one of those yet, but I plan on it this year. Do more things because Portland gets such a bad rap right now, and it is kind of crazy down there. There's a lot of there's a lot of things like a lot of petty theft,
Right.
So that does deter a lot of people. But one of my friends had a show at the Helium Club, and Cliff and I went down for it, and it was like the first thing I did after COVID. It was the first public kind of setting, and it felt so good. And it was like, oh, here are all the weirdos and freaks and the people that I resonate most with. These are the people that make Portland, and they're all still here, and that I need that in my life. I need more interaction with those types of folks because it's just blowing up about the bad stuff.
Right. Yeah.
There's still a lot of great creative folks.
Well, I know over here in Michigan or across the country, we hear a lot of bad things about Portland or Seattle. But I know I lived in Portland for 6 months back in the 90s, late 90s. And I loved it. I mean, I was introduced to Powell's and I walked in, I said, I have a book. I think I'm going to stump you. And the guy said, you won't stump me with any book. And I said, do you have a Calumet K? And he said, what? So he's looking through the records. He goes, we don't have that book. And I've never heard of it. I'm like, because that bookstore is like a block. It's how many stories? It's a full city block. I've never been into a bookstore that large.
It's huge. Yeah.
But I remember Portland for that's when I first was introduced to Widmer Brothers, Hefeweizen, the microbrewery. And I fell in love with that beer. And I can still find it at times. And that's when I first had my first microbrew was out there.
Oh, that checks out. That's they're everywhere.
Yeah. This was late 90s, so they weren't as prominent, but that was the first microbrew. And I remember we used to go see a band at this little, kind of a dive, little eclectic bar. And I always forget the name of the band. It was a husband and wife, and they were the most amazing singers and songwriters and guitarists that I've ever heard in my life. And I've Googled them a few times, and they're still playing after 20-some years.
Wow.
Yeah, I can't think of the name of them. I hope I do before we're done. So
if you remember, you can email it to me or get in touch with me.
I will, because I know I Googled them on my computer, so it's probably still on there. It was their names. It was first and last. They're both their names, like Sandy and Adam. That wasn't it, but it was something like that. They were fantastic. They were.
Wow.
So this is a question I always ask, and I got your permission to ask this before we started recording on air today. What for you, Melissa, was the most difficult thing you've ever gone through in life, and how did you overcome it? How did you scale that wall?
Yeah. I would have to say, and it's not just one. I'm going to say it's a subject of death.
Okay.
Because, even starting when I was young, the girl had been abducted. One of my friend's friends, when I was young, like about 7, and we never found her. She's just disappeared. And then in high school, a guy I went to high school with and rode the band bus with, he ended up murdering a local businessman, and then he ended up killing himself in prison. And it was somebody that I talked to. I mean, we weren't like best friends or anything, but it was still like I'd ride the band bus with him. I decided him in sociology class or whatever, And then through my life, it was like then my grandfather killed himself, and then just seeing how people like overcome such terrible things, and then as I grew up, it's not bad luck to be my friend, by the way, or my relative, but I do have a lot of death that surrounds me. And then I lost, I'd say 5 friends in the past decade from like various diseases or, cancer a lot of times. And then a coworker got murdered, one of my coworkers, Michelle, and that was really hard. And then I lost a partner. So that was probably the hardest.
Oh, man.
Yeah. And then overcoming and realizing like, that's it. So I have like a weird relationship with death, but I also think that we think this is it. Like, no one really knows what happens after, but I do have like, this is probably, I think that this is a gift. You do with it what you want, but I'm not saying this is it. And I think that maybe we do have several other lives, maybe on different planets or who really knows?
Who knows? Right.
I have absolutely no idea, but I did, when my partner passed, my friend Mary, she wrote to me, and I think anytime someone says someone dies, I'm like, I'm going to send you this because this helps me. And it was when we're born, we cry and the world is happy, but when we die, the world cries, but we're happy. Oh. And I'm like, oh, that's so great. Ooh. That's so great.
That is goosebumps.
Oh,
that is powerful. Well, I was talking to, and we don't know what happens afterward. I was talking to a client this morning, and we were talking about the law of attraction and how when we put things out there, now it used to be where it's kind of psychobabble bullcrap. If you put these positive feelings out there and you visualize and you have these vision boards, that I always thought that was crap. I always thought, no, I'm more pragmatic than that. But then I started really researching it over the years, and it was actually just I watched a documentary the other night called The Secret that really got me thinking more about it in this last couple of days. But I was thinking of a quote. There was a gentleman by the name of Roger Penrose, and he was in Great Britain. He was like the leading scientist. He won the Queen's Award, and he was known all over the world in the last decade. And somebody asked him, what are the chances that this universe was created by chaos and accident? And he said, I did the numbers. It's 1 over 100 billion to the 123rd power. So basically impossibility. And he was an atheist at one point. Then after being a scientist and doing this research, and he said, and that's to have a chaotic universe. We have a controlled, non-chaotic universe where we have life and we have conscious thought in the one species, which is human. And he said that's even much, much greater, the probability of that happening by just pure chance. And so that always made me think, and because I was Christian, then I was atheist and agnostic, and then I became a believer of something out there. I don't know what happens, I always tell my son, I believe in the possibility. And, and that number always stuck with me. In fact, I have it it says, what is your religion under Facebook? I just put that quote. That's all I put.
Oh, that's great.
But you've gone through, and I don't think it's bad luck or it's bad karma or anything, but you have gone through a lot of loss in your life. That's a lot of loss. So was it that quote, Melissa, or was there something you thought or did that made you say, I can handle this? Because it really happened starting at 7 years old when your friend's friend was abducted and never found. What was the strength that got you through this?
It kind of sticks with you. Yeah, it really does. Like it's basically, you have to take everything one day at a time, and you can't expect to like, allow yourself to mourn, allow yourself to not be okay, and luckily I did go to therapy after, Chris died, but I didn't even last there very long. Because I kept having to talk about it, and I was like over it.
Right.
But at the time, I wasn't ready for therapy. But I just feel like I'm fine with the way things are because you have to be. But I truly don't think those people are ever truly gone. I think I don't know though, But I think that the veil is thin, and we just can't see it, And I think that I know they're okay. And this world's rough for a lot of people. I count myself very lucky and very blessed because I have a great life, and I didn't ask for it. It's funny. I did not ask for any of this, but I must have, without really knowing. But I think just when death comes and shows its ugly face, it should be more of a blessing. Some people can say that it's actually death is a gift, a gift to men, like in Lord of the Rings. It's very because this world's so hard for so many people, that death is actually a gift.
Right. And it's not that people who take their lives, I had a friend 4 years ago, his girlfriend took her life. And one of the things we talked a lot about is she didn't leave because she didn't want to live. She didn't want to leave life. She wanted to leave the pain, she was going through.
Yeah.
And sometimes the pain is more overriding. And you think about it, our entire instinct is survival. And so when somebody actually takes their own life, unless I know sometimes they do it because they're, it's a moment snap, but a lot of times people do it when they just, the pain is so deep and it's been going on and lingering so long, they really can't, they just realize I can't do this anymore. It's not just, whether it's a chronic physical pain or it's a chronic emotional pain, they can't carry the burden anymore.
Right. Yeah.
I want to share.
So sad.
It is. So I want to talk to the Bamboo Pack member, and I just want you to put have you take what Melissa just said and put your life parallel to hers. If you're going through some pain right now, whether it's mental, emotional, physical, financial, marital, whatever it might be, financial pain, put your life parallel to hers. Don't compare your life to hers, and don't compare your problems to hers, but put it parallel. And think about the things that she's gone through. When she was 7 years old, and a friend of a friend was abducted and never found. A friend she had that rode the band bus with committed a murder and then suicide in prison. Her grandfather committed suicide. She lost 5 friends in a decade. A coworker was murdered, and she lost her partner Chris at one point. And then all that, and what did she just say? One of the last statements she said, I have a great life. So whenever we're going through any moment in time, and I've gone through these pain, these depths and gone down rabbit holes of grief and pain, and many times in my life, there's always a light at the end of the tunnel. There always is, if we see it. And if we have to move forward, we have to take those chances, like Melissa said, when she said, the universe rewards those who take chances. So sometimes to get out of that rabbit hole, we have to take a chance that we're deathly afraid of, that terrifies the hell out of us. And sometimes that's what gets us through. But there's always a moment, if we fight through the pain, we scale the brick walls that are in front of us, there will be a moment in your life that you can probably say, like Melissa said, I have a great life. So thank you for sharing that, Melissa. I wanted to repeat that because I want the Bamboo Pack member out there who's going through something right now to just realize there's a great life ahead of you. We just have to seek it, and you got to take those chances.
Yeah, and surround yourself with people who are good people for you. Supportive, nurturing. Find good friends and family that actually are there for you. Because I know not everyone is, and not everyone has access to support. But if you can, get with people who care about you.
It's so amazing how many of the guests on the podcast, Melissa, have given that advice, and I think it's one of the most powerful things because, I've always heard you become an average of the top 5 people you spend the most of your time with, and the thing is too is I had a guest on yesterday who's she does childhood trauma therapy. And I got her information from a literary agent who sends me a lot of authors to have them on my podcast. And I got a box of her books, and I was reading one of them, and it said in one of the exercises, this is Robin Marble. She'll be on the following week after you're on, or after she'll air after a week after you do. And there was an exercise that said, write the 5 people who you spend the most time with and who have the most impact and you talk to the most. And I did the exercise. And the next question after the exercise is, did you include yourself? And I didn't, and I was talking to her pre-recording yesterday. I said, I didn't. She goes, Brian, nobody does. That's the point of the exercise. So not just surrounding yourself with important people or good people, quality people, people who challenge you, support you, and celebrate with you. That's so vitally important. It's necessary. But also, if you can't, make sure you're that person, that you celebrate yourself, you support yourself, and you challenge yourself. And surround your people and do that for the people around you, and you will attract people who will do that for you as well.
Absolutely.
So, Melissa, at this point in stage in your life and in your career, what would you consider a win or a triumph?
Oh boy, that's a really good question. I feel that when everybody else wins too, that's like obviously an answer you want to give. Because in a group, if I'm working on a show or a movie or something and we wrap it up and then it's finished, that's such a win for all of us, good experiences. But creatively, I'll just go there now. But so I when you feel like your art is being recognized in a way, if my work that I post or something gets me a job or something on a movie, and that's been kind of happening more and more this year, that to me is just the best feeling I could ever have, with professional stuff. Completing a job that somebody's thought, I want to hire her because of something I saw and they believe in me. And I think it's the belief in me, not even they liked my thing that I made, whatever, superficial, right? But it's it's more than that. It's more of, hey, they have faith in me that I can do this for them. And that makes me work hard. And then whenever the job is done, then I can say it's a win and everyone's happy.
Well, I would imagine that the type of passion and commitment you put into your art, the art becomes a part of you. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a true artist, whatever your art is. I think when your art becomes a part of your soul and somebody recognizes it, they're recognizing your soul. They're recognizing all those years of hard work and strife and, long hours that you put into your talent and your passion. They're recognizing all those years, not just that piece of art. And all those years represent you and your soul. That's the way I look at it.
Mm-hmm. Wow. That's a nice way to look at it. Yeah. And it's because you're kind of, it's kind of embarrassing putting stuff out. I mean, there's a little bit of you that's oh man, I feel like all I do is just put out what I made. Look at this, but it's expression.
Yes.
It's an expression of what I've been working on. And it's burying your soul to everyone, and it's kind of it's embarrassing. You're kind of you're at the mercy of the public, which could be very scary. But I will say I have the most supportive people. I mean, I really do. The Facebook community have been so wonderful to me, and I'm so supportive, and I honestly so appreciate it. I can't even say it enough. I really do. I notice every comment, every it's just so nice to be welcomed and appreciated. And likewise, I get so much inspiration from them and what they're creating. And it's just such a collaborative little chaotic world in there.
Well, yeah, I can see. Yeah, you have. A lot of the stuff. Hey, by the way, I saw it was Cliff's birthday not long ago.
Oh yeah, it was the 28th, so Monday.
Oh well, happy birthday, Cliff.
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna say 40. Yeah. I'm gonna say 40 years old. We'll leave it at that.
Oh yeah.
We'll leave it at that. That's his birthday gift from me. No, but seriously, I hope you have a great year, Cliff, and I hope you had a wonderful birthday.
Yeah, he got to stay home all day and enjoy it. It was pouring rain and snow, but he enjoys his time at home. Yeah. That's a win for Cliff if he can actually stay the whole day home without having to take phone calls or work stuff. But owning a museum, it's you're kind of working all the time.
Right. Well, I'm going to have to come out there and definitely see the museum. There's no doubt. That's going to be one.
Absolutely.
It'll be a bucket list for me, for sure.
Oh wow, yeah.
So I'm going to ask you if you and I, Melissa, were to jump on a time machine right now, we're going to go back. We're going to go back in time, and we're going to go back to that point where you were where you said, I was always a little weird in my small town. I was a little off. And you could sit down with that young lady at that point. What would you tell her about life? What maybe recipe for success or advice would you give her?
Yeah. Just go big, go big. don't care so much about what people think or judgments made against you. Because if you're living your truth, then you're doing the right thing, because some people's truth is going to work at that tax firm 9 to 5 every day. They're happy. I mean, I work with accountants that are seriously excited to be there. Obviously it's a job, but they loved having that. They knew what was going on every day. They, the habitual like coffee breaks at 10:45 a.m. And then they go and then they have their lunch at 1 o'clock. Or it's like they love the repetition and routine of having an office job, and that's what makes our world go round. I mean, that's why we can be successful, because there's those people. They're like machines, man. They get in there and they get it done, and they love it.
Yeah.
And they're living their life. They love it. They have 2.5 kids. They have a wife and a house and a picket fence, and they're so happy.
Yep.
Now, me, that's like prison, but not for everyone.
Well, I was talking to a guest yesterday. We actually aired the episode I aired it last night. It was a special episode. We were a very iconoclastic individual out in Bend, Oregon. And I talked about, I said, I would say to her, I said, Jen, I think I would classify you, and I think most people would, you and how you've lived your life, as weird. You're a weirdo. And she's like, she giggled, and I said, but let me stop you for a minute. I said, before you get upset, I think we have to make our lives a safe haven for weirdos, because weirdos change the world. And what I mean by weird for me would be that tax job. That's weird. Maybe the way you live to them is weird, or maybe the way I live to them is weird. We're all weird. Weird just means you're different than me. And I love the fact that we're all different. We all have a different truth, a different passion, a different talent and an ability, and different dreams and desires. I think that is, like you said, that's what makes the world go round. And I got to tell you, I'm very happy, and I think the world is very happy that you left that tax firm and chased your passions, because the world is a much better place. You would have impacted the world on a much more microscopic level doing financial statements, looking over financial statements in the tax firm in New York. So I'm glad you took that leap.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I am too. And even from here, like I'm leaping into another world that I don't know much about, but I mean, I've been researching with the weather stuff. Like I'm trained National Weather Service spotter for Portland. Okay. I took a class at Harvard X. I'm certified backyard meteorology. So I can only do the weather from my backyard, but
Okay.
And I also work for CoCoRES, which is a precipitation measurement. We do that measurements daily for CoCoRES, and that way we learn more about precipitation and its effects and how it's changing over time. So I'm incorporating myself more into some of the weather stuff, because I do have such a passion for weather that I never really quite delved into. But during the pandemic, I took all my classes to get certified. I used that time to I want to go and get some weather stuff done. I figured out why not. Everything was pretty much free at that time. So I'm kind of leaping into, or putting my foot in the pond, and I'm going to go on my first storm chase next spring. Oh. And I'm pretty psyched about that. So yeah, I mean, you're always like changing and our likes and dislikes and our passions, but I'm always going to make monsters and props. Like that's just my thing. I'm always going to own the museum with Cliff, and we're going to keep that going. But I also know I'm like, I'm going to try this too, because these women that I know through that network, they've been doing this for years, and they're scientists, and but they're so sweet, and they're kind of taking me under their wing, and it's going to be another adventure. So don't say no to adventure either. Just go for it.
Wait till I write that down. Don't say no.
Oh, that was a lot. I'm so sorry.
No, because I'm always looking for the title of the podcast. I think I got it earlier with something you said, but you got 3 or 4 more things. I'm gonna have to decipher which one I'm gonna use. So you answered my next question, which is what's next for you? Is it I'm assuming it's this weather dipping into the weather pond.
Yeah, and I do have a couple of movie projects I'm working on right now. I have to make some body parts and some other things. I'm building a prop warehouse for horror films, so that local films can just rent props from me instead of having to buy it all, because it gets really expensive. When you need stunt gear, because I'll have stunt gear. Crash pads are expensive, and these budgets, you just don't have enough money to do it safely. So if I can rent it out for like $100 a day or something, instead of like $2,000 to buy one, I'm trying to get into that too, offering more props for local shoots. And also, I mean, I shipped props even out to New York before. So, I mean, just doing that. And then also maybe a little bit of like storm chasing because that'd be cool. So, we'll see.
So do you make all the props that you're going to rent out? Do you make a lot of them, most of them, all of them?
I think all of them.
Really?
Except for like, I'm trying to think if there's anything. There's a bat. There's a couple rubber bats that I didn't make.
Yeah.
Weapons. But yeah, I mean, I can make weapons, body parts. What do you need?
I've seen it all. I've seen a lot of things on Facebook that I'm like, how the hell does she make that? I mean,
she's so gross.
Oh, I know. I think that stuff is fascinating. I really do. I've seen a lot of things that I'm like, and that was part of like, she's got to be on the podcast. She's unique enough that people are going to connect. Oh yeah, there was one I just looked it up just now. There was one of a hand that I'm like, that looks just like a hand. It kind of looks like my hand. It's cut off and it's got a design. I don't know what the symbol is on it.
Oh, the Blair Witch. It's the Blair Witch.
Oh, that's a Blair Witch sign. Okay.
Yeah, funny story about that. I actually made that for I don't know if you know who Greg Hale is. He was one of the producers of Blair Witch.
Okay.
He had made a movie called Exists, which is about Bigfoot.
I've seen that. I have seen that.
Okay. So he was the director, and we ended up having the opportunity to take him on a Bigfoot little scout mission at night one night. And I was stoked. I was like, okay, I'm a fangirl right now because he made one of my favorite films ever, and I have to make him something. Wouldn't it be weird if I made him something? It's probably really creepy, but I'm going to do it. And so I made him that hand. And now I have another one I made just so I can have one too. And then I gave him into I put it into a cupcake box, and then I put leaves and blood all over the outside and inside, and I gave it to him.
So was Exist or Blair Witch one of your favorite movies?
Oh, Blair Witch.
Oh my gosh, that movie was terrifying.
It was so scary. And I think it was also like the time I was living in the woods, being a camp counselor at the time in Connecticut. And that movie came out. And it was just, I think that living that life and seeing that movie really definitely made it worse probably. But we'd wake up from our overnights and there'd be piles of rocks outside. The guys would come mess with us. Yeah. But it was all in fun.
I think that movie changed the horror genre. It made a huge impact on it in a small budget movie.
Right. I mean, I cannot believe it.
Now you see a lot of those type of, almost, I don't know what they call them, but that style of a horror film was real popular for a while, but nothing matched Blair Witch.
No, yeah, it is called found footage.
Okay.
Like the technical, look at that opened up the door to like so many of them. And some are really good,
Yeah.
Some are really bad.
Yeah. I think I've seen the bad ones.
It's hard.
It's funny. When I growing up, Melissa, I loved horror movies. I remember the first one I ever saw that I remember was an old movie called Gargoyles. And you can still watch it I found it on YouTube. My brother and I used to watch it when I was little. It scared the Jesus out of me. But then I really liked horror movies, and I watched all the slasher films, and I liked, the Amityville Horrors, and I liked all those going up, and the Love Blair Witch. And over the last 10 years, I don't think I've watched one scary movie. For some reason, I don't think I can do it. I don't know what it is. I get scared. I have no idea what it is. I don't.
They're scary.
Well, they are. You would think, as my youngest son is 20 years old, my youngest of both kids, and you would think that I would watch them with him as he was in his teens, but we never really watched any. We might have watched one or two that I don't remember, but maybe that's not his genre. He said he watched one a few weeks ago. Well, I think he watched an episode of the Dahmer movie, and he said, documentary, he said, Dad, you called me, don't watch that movie. He only watched when he goes, I couldn't handle it. So maybe he could, maybe that's it.
I don't know. I couldn't watch that one either.
Yeah. That's not my thing. Well,
I think it is scary. And, I have a different perspective on it. Like when I watch horror, I see I wonder how they did that. Or,
right.
I know like that fake arm or that hand, or like I get excited about the squid that's shooting blood out because it's like, oh, there's a tube right under there. It's kind of fun. But like I could see, obviously, I also just like, I can get into a movie and I'm in that world, submersed in it. I can leave this reality very quickly. My husband always tells me that. He's like, you're so into it. I'm like, yeah. But I love it. And I do get freaked out, even though I do know how those things are kind of made, or, I'm interested. It's also scary because I feel like I'm in the world. And I just saw Barbarian. That is one I'll highly recommend.
Really?
It was really good.
It is scary?
Uh-huh.
All right.
But it's also, it's like a movie within a movie. You have no idea don't watch any trailers. Just go in and watch it, because it's not anything I've ever seen before. It's so good.
I'll have to do that when I'm not alone.
Yeah.
Well, my son,
you don't have to watch it.
he'll be home for Christmas for a month here in, I think, 10 days. So I'll save that one for Christmas break. That'd be a good Christmas movie.
Yeah, Merry Christmas.
Yeah, exactly.
Sounds like my house.
I love it. Well, Melissa, as we begin to wrap up, is there any question that I didn't ask that I should have? Is there any last final moment or statement you'd like to make, or a mantra you want to share with the Bamboo Pack?
Oh, hey, Bamboo Pack. Thanks for listening. I am just really grateful to be here. This is like the first podcast I've been on that wasn't specifically about Bigfoot. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Not that I don't love the subject, but it's nice to be like, oh, I get to talk about my other work, which is
right.
Cool. I really appreciate that. Also, I think it's just like sending out vibes of like, what is it? Be the reason someone smiles today, Like, I find that after the pandemic, that is one thing that's still not right, is that people are not friendly, like in grocery stores. I mean, maybe it's just me around here, but I feel like now that we don't have the masks on, people forget and they're just like scowling.
Yeah.
Because they forget that they don't have the covering. And then it's like, I would like to smile at you, even though I'm an introvert, but I still need some sort of human connection outside, And I feel like a lot of people are still kind of like grumpy, or, I understand, but it's just like, if I could get someone to smile back at me, that's a win,
I love that.
So.
I think you're right. I agree with you on that one. I never thought of that. I think people are less friendly. I did a podcast. I just did a monologue podcast a few months ago, and it was things my dad would have told me. My father passed away when I was 4.5. And one of the things I talked about was holding a door for people. I was coming out of Walmart one day, and I watched I held the door for 5 or 6 people. Not even one person said anything until the last, I think it was the 5th or 6th person. It was a lady. She said, "Thank you so much, young man, for holding the door." Something like, "We don't have enough gentlemen anymore." And I'm like, that's true. I didn't really notice that. But now that I've looked around, people are just a little more, I don't know, recluse. They're just a little more, I don't know if selfish is the right word, but yeah, I think the mask kind of took our personalities away to some degree. We didn't have to show any facial expression, and we didn't have to show a smile or a twinkle or a nice grin or an acknowledgement. We just went through the motions like robots, and now we're still living that nightmare.
Mm-hmm. The masks come off, but we're still like, it's just, I don't know. I just feel like that goes a long way, because that can make or break me, because I don't leave my house much. So when I leave it, I either go to the museum or shopping for groceries, right? So those are my only interactions outside, other than like friend stuff. And it's just like, it'll totally bum me out if there's just cranky people. Like I come home and I'm just like, why did I leave the house? Like, why?
Well,
I'm happy here with my dog.
Yeah, and you're an empath, so you're taking on a lot of those emotions. They're coming into you. They're like a magnet.
Yeah.
You're drawing it in. Wow.
Oh my goodness, you're right. It is weird how that happens. You're empathic too. I can guess, because just after talking to you.
Yeah, people have told me that. I didn't really even know what an empath was until maybe 18 months ago when somebody said, "I think you're an empath," and I said, "Well, I don't know what that is." So I Googled it, and I said, "Well, maybe I am." I do to some degree. I do take on other people's emotions, and I can feel, when somebody's sad, it makes me sad. Not to their level. Somebody's happy, it makes me happy. Not to their level, but it's still, I guess I do tend to draw in their emotions a bit. But
yeah, and that's a nice thing. I mean, you don't want to have any empathy.
Right? Yeah. I mean, I know some people who have no empathy at all, and they don't even notice your emotions or somebody else's emotions. Mm-hmm. But well, as we wrap up, I just want to just recap a little bit here to the Bamboo Pack. Some of the pieces of nuggets here, and there were so many in here. I have them, a lot of them circled. But what I liked is, and I like what you said about what made you a believer in Bigfoot was the big growl. Yeah, that big growl you heard to your left, I think it was. And I think so many of us, you can use it as a metaphor for so many of us, because what moment in our life changed us? We all have multiple moments, but if you can identify, everybody, just what is a moment that you had that turned things around for you, one that really stands out in your life, something you heard, said, experienced, felt that turned it around. If it hasn't happened yet, if you can't think of it, be on the lookout for it, because the moments come and go like busboys in a restaurant. And I'm stealing that from Stephen King's movie Stand By Me. But they're like, they come and go. And we have to make sure we're capturing those moments, because that moment for Melissa it turned her from a non-believer to a believer. We all have moments like that. I love what she said. The universe rewards those who take chances. Take a chance. Take a chance. Because if you feel like you don't have a great life right now, Melissa at one point went through a lot of turmoil over a long course of time, and now she can sit here and say, I have a great life. A lot of that's because she took chances. Moving from the tax firm to following her passions is one of them. Another one is surround yourself with great people. That piece of information might be the most important advice Melissa gave today, because that can make or break you. I know you Bamboo Pack members remember my conversations so many times about people are either nourishing food to you or they're toxic poison to you. And we have to make sure we're surrounding our wagons and around the people who are nourishing and food style for you, who feed you and you feed them. You support them, you celebrate with them, and you challenge them to grow and become better. And go big. She said, go big. That's what she would have told her younger version of herself. Go big. Don't care about people's judgments. Live your truth. That's crucial. And then the final one I'll leave with is be the reason someone smiles today. In this post-COVID world, we're out there. Masks are off, but they're still metaphorically on us. Be the reason someone smiles. Hold a door. Say hi. I mean, I was in a store the other day on Veterans Day when a lady was checking out, and she looked like she was fairly impoverished. And I was checking out when the place was packed, and she stopped at the door, and she yelled at the top of her lungs, I want to thank all of you veterans out there for supporting our country and defending our freedom. I love you all. And she walked out. I'm like, that took a lot of courage, man. And there were people chuckling and laughing at her. I'm like, that was powerful. It made those veterans smile. And it made people who are non-veterans like myself smile. So the stuff you shared today, Melissa, was so good. I was really interested in the creative style of your life. You shared that, but you also gave so much wisdom, which was exactly what Bamboo Pack members look for. And they got to know you. They got to know, your story, your past, your current life, and your creative life, as well as what you do for work and the things you create. But they also got to learn these amazing pieces of wisdom that now I'm going to have a hard time finding a title for today's podcast. So there was one leading winner. So Melissa Barackman, I just want to thank you so much for being such an amazing, inspiring, eclectic, and creative guest on the Bamboo Lab podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. And it was really good being here and speaking to you today.
Oh,
really appreciate it.
Can we talk a few minutes after I go off air?
Sure.
Good. Well, thank you again. And Bamboo Pack members, thank you for tuning in this week. As you know, we'll be back in 7 days. And in the meantime, please get out there. Please hit that like button, subscribe, rate, review us, and please share this with 3 people. 3 people you love and care for, because those 3 people, they're going to get so much value out of what Melissa shared today. You can change their lives, literally. In the meantime, until we talk next, Bamboo Pack, please get out there and sculpt your life. Remember, inside of you, there's that true peak identity, that purity of yours. Throw that fake ID around. Pick up your true peak ID by sculpting every day the things you don't need and develop the things you need. In the meantime, just remember, I appreciate each and every single one of you.